Hi everyone, so here I am with this promised video tutorial. So I'm Rajiv and today I'm going to take you through some concepts, basic to intermediate concepts of HTML and CSS. So this tutorial is targeted for somebody who is just starting with HTML and CSS, and they want to learn about web development. So this is for them, and having a prior knowledge of how HTML and CSS works is also fine, because towards the end of this whole tutorial I'm going to build up a single page website, and as we do so we will learn more about HTML syntaxes, HTML tag selectors, and how CSS can be integrated to style HTML pages and all those things. So having a little bit of fundamental understanding of how web works is going to definitely help, and that would be outside the scope of this tutorial. So without much ado, let's get started. I have created a document which I'll keep on referring to, and this will keep us in check if we are digressing from the topic. So our objectives are pretty clear here. First is that we need to understand what is an HTML, then we will move to CSS, then we will understand deeply about how HTML and CSS can be integrated with each other in these two sections, and then we will move to CSS library, which is very popular, and it's known as Bootstrap, and we'll be using the latest version of Bootstrap to build up a single page website. And while we do this entire activity, we will go through the basic concept of HTML, the classes, IDs, tag, reserve tags, and then I'll also show you some resources, and one prominent one in particular, which is w3cschools.com. So I'll also go and then refer to that, and while I do so, you will also find it very helpful if you are stuck somewhere, where to go and how to find the solution. Okay, so yeah, you can see that in the end I have this objective here, building a single page website with Bootstrap. I have already planned the pages, the whole single page layouts, content. So here you can see we will have a hero section, then we will move to the about us section. This is all one page, and when the user clicks on the navigation, it will just scroll down smoothly to the next section by using anchor links. So we'll also learn those things. Well, so now enough of the introduction, let's get started. And I must tell you that don't expect to be this tutorial to be a quick one, because we are trying to cover a lot of things here. So just tighten your seat belts, it's going to be a long ride. However, you feel free, because it's a self-paced learning, I think would help you better. So feel free to pause the video anytime and then come back to it. And it would be also good if you pause the video and then side by side also build up the project as I do so. So let's get started then. So the first thing about HTML is we need some place where we can write it, right? HTML is hypertext markup language. Let me scroll down to this part here where it says basic concepts of HTML and CSS. So yes, pretty much straightforward. It's a markup language. What markup languages are essentially is that it organizes the content which is there going to be on the website. Now, organization doesn't mean in the visual space it is organizing it. However, if you don't apply any styling with the help of CSS, either in inline format or in text format or external CSS sheets, HTML for document already has a structure from top to bottom, and the content is going to start appearing in the order they are written in the HTML file. So we will also see the live examples, but before I get to the more theoretical thing, let me also set your expectations. So I have a few tabs open here, and we will go through all these. So the first exercise we will do is create an amazing card. I call it an amazing card. Because this is the first time when you are probably building up some shapes, and then filling that shape with a image, applying drop shadows, and you are not using a tool like Photoshop, Illustrator or Figma. You are doing it all with the codes. So that's why I call it an amazing card. This is how we will start with our journey. And then we will move to replicating that card, scaling that card, adding a button to the card, and changing the color of the background. And as we do so, we will learn more concepts of CSS. CSS is cascading style sheets. HTML is hypertext markup language. CSS helps you in creating the styles, beautifying the pages, let's put it that way. See, the entire concept of how HTML and CSS comes in together to build up the websites we experience on a daily basis is slightly more complicated than just saying that CSS does the styling part and HTML does the content organization. But to begin with, I think this is a good start, and this much of knowledge can further lead you to exploring more concepts, and then you will build your own ideas about how these things can be used. Now, this is eventually what we are going to build at the end of this tutorial, and I have just built the half of it just to show you that there are other sections which needs to be added to it. So what we will do is we will create everything you see on the screen from scratch, and we will use Bootstrap 5, which is an amazing framework. It's an open source framework, doesn't cost a single penny, just the developers, right? So that's what we are going to do. Let me get back to the document here. And so basically it's a language, right? We'll be writing codes, so we need something where we can write the codes, and for that we need a code editor. There are many code editors, but one step ahead than code editors you can think of as IDEs, which is not just a code editor but an environment which allows you to effectively code, efficiently code basically. Yeah. And as your project gets complex, it's better to work with an IDE because it supports many nice features such as code formatter. It also gives you live servers where you just code and then side by side you can check how your website is showing up. So we'll be using a very popular code editor, or IDE, integrated development environment, which is known as VS Code, and it's offered by Microsoft. You just have to go to code.visualstudio.com, that's the URL, or just go in the Google search and then type in VS Code. We need to navigate to the download section and download the Visual Studio Code for your operating system. I am on Windows and I already have it installed, so I'm not going to do that again. Those who are on Mac should go for the third option, and those who are using Linux or any other distribution of Linux, they can use the middle one. So the things which I am saying in context to VS Code, for example, if I tell you a shortcut, so always make sure that on Mac you use command instead of control, option instead of alt, and shift is same. I'll be using Windows, so I'll be using only Windows keystrokes, shortcuts. So let's get started then. You download it and install. It's a fair simple installation. Just say next, and you'll be done in a couple of minutes. So I'm gonna just fire up Visual Studio Code, which is already installed, and it will show you the last project you were working on. So this is what I was working on. I was showing this to a group of students. I'm just gonna go and then choose file, and then choose I want to see, ideally I can start with a open file and then show you what HTML and CSS is, but I would rather just do it as we build up our project. So what I'm going to do here is not open anything here, but rather first create a structure which will help us build our website. So this is the old one, right? You can see multiple pages here and all. So I'm going to create a new one, and I have already downloaded a few images, something like a logo and a background which I'll be using, and some images for the slideshow I want on my website. So I'm just going to copy this images folder and then go back, create a new folder, and let me just call it create a new folder, and we will call it Eco Kids because that's the name of the site I'm doing, and say demo. Let's say that's the folder I want. Eco Kids demo will go inside, and this is our root directory. Here all our files are going to stay. So the images I have copied, all of them are inside the images folder. I'm going to paste the entire folder here, go back and quickly create a couple of files. One is going to be the HTML file, another is going to be a CSS file. So let's right click on it, go to the new and go to the text document. This is going to be index.html. Do not forget to change the extension, otherwise it will not work. Okay, and it may throw some warning also, which is fine. Just say yes. You should read it once what it says. Don't worry, it's not going to be unstable. We have changed it to a very known extension, which is HTML, and now you can see the Chrome association is showing up. If you don't see the Chrome association, then right click on it and then go to show more options, go to properties, click on change, and make sure that the default browser you use is selected, and then you can hit on set default. I'm not gonna do that. I'll just escape and then cancel. Now the CSS file, I want to show you that you can create from VS Code itself, and hereafter everything we can do from VS Code. Okay, so let's go to the VS Code and we will start with a new window, a blank window. So go to the file menu, choose new window, and let's close the old one. This is starting from scratch. We have absolutely nothing planned up on this. We see a welcome dialog box where you have many options to work with. I'm just going to close this just to avoid the complexities and guide you how you begin with VS Code. See, the interface is very easy to understand. You just have a navigation at the top and a sort of toolbox on the left hand side. That's all. And on the right hand side you have a few options which are regular options which you get in the Windows. Below you have the settings and then your account. You don't need to create any account here as of yet. We can just start with vanilla VS Code, like absolutely nothing. However, I would advise that you download and install a couple of plugins. You don't have to go anywhere else, just go to the extensions. And then first thing you have to install is live server. So type in live server. What this will help us is preview the things which we are doing in the coding environment directly in the browser without refreshing it. Otherwise, every time we make a change, we have to refresh it. That's the first thing you have to do. So you go and then type in the extensions live server and then look for live server by Microsoft. This is what I am using. You can use a different one also, but since we are using this one for the demonstrations, I would advise that you go with this one. I already have it installed. That's why you don't see an install button here. You just have to click on that install button and it will be installed. Another setting which we are going to do is say Control Shift P on the keyboard, which will open up the command panel. Control Shift P. For Mac people, it's going to be Command Shift and P, and then type in auto save. Make sure that you have selected this option, file toggle auto save. You click on it once, that's it, and then escape out. What it does is every time you make some changes to your code, it's gonna auto save it. So saves extra time of hitting Control S every time. A lot of times people are confused why my changes are not getting updated in the browser window, but they forget that they haven't saved the code. So even if you have edited one single file like CSS file and you have saved the HTML file, it's not gonna reflect. You have to ensure that all the files which are stakeholders in rendering that page on the browser is saved. So it's a good option, because as the project gets complex, we work on a lot of files, and it's a good idea to turn on autosave. So now it's a blank window. We have absolutely nothing open here. What we are going to do is open up the folder we have created. So we'll go to the file menu and then we will go to open folder and then navigate to the folder we have. So I have it under digital domain, and that's the folder we have created, Eco Kids demo. Ensure that the top level folder is open, right? and then say select folder. Seems as if nothing happened. You again get to see this welcome dialog box. Just close it, but don't worry, the folder got imported. You click on open editors. In your case you might see Explorer. Don't get confused, that is the updated version of VS Code. I am using an old version of VS Code. So you click on this and then you will see open editors and then EcoKits. Let me tell you what are these two. And below that you have timeline and outline. We will not work with timeline or outline, but I'll show you in the middle ones how those are used. So open editors simply means any page, if it is open, it's going to get listed under open editors, and that's why you see don't see any of the pages open here. So if I click on index.html, you see that index.html also gets listed here under open editors. That simply means that these files are open right now in the editor. Okay, you see this EcoKits demo, that's coming from the folder's name, and that is being treated as our root folder. Then you have the images folder. If you remember, we have copied this, and inside the images folder we also have a slides folder. That's all. Now we need to create a CSS file, but before we do so, let's start our first line of HTML code. Let me close this once again and start fresh. Click on HTML, index.html, and then the first thing we do here is type HTML. The best part of using an IDE is that it helps you write the code on its own. So if you just type in the tags, I'll talk later about tags, don't worry, but know that HTML is a tag. Similarly, you will come across many tags as we advance further in this tutorial. So you can make a note of those tags and then look for learning about those tags more. I'll tell you where to look in w3cschools.com and how to learn more about the tags. It's like building a vocabulary. So the grammar is there, that means the syntax, the structure, and then the tags are like vocabulary. All those tags have certain meanings and they facilitate some features. So think about it in that way. So if I type HTML and then use my arrow keys to drop down to the second option which says HTML5 and hit tab on the keyboard, I get the structure of the document. This is the basic structure from where you can begin. Okay, and that's the beauty of IDE. You don't have to type all of it. If you would have used a code editor or something like Notepad to write codes, you can definitely write codes in Notepad as well. Then probably you have to type in all these things. Okay, but this IDE takes care of that. Good. So let's have a look at the structure here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so that it can be clearer to you. And also another setting you have to do is go to the view menu and choose word wrap. What it does is it wraps your code. As the lines get longer, it wraps it. So that's a good practice to have. Now the first line of code here is doctype HTML. It's a doctype declaration. It tells the browser which type of document you are dealing with. Okay, and the second line is in which language it is written. So these are self-contained tags. That means it does not need to be opened and closed. The tag itself is opening and closing, right? Unlike the head tag, which is having an opening and a closing. So the opening tags are encapsulated inside bigger than and smaller than sign, and the closing tags has bigger than and then a forward slash and name of the tag and the smaller than sign. So don't make mistakes while looking at tags. Another thing is that any class, any attribution is defined where the tag is open, not where the tag is closed. Okay, all right. Now inside this head tag you see 3 lines of code. Out of these 3 lines, only the third one is opening and closing. The other 2 are self-contained, and those are meta tags. Meta tags and linking and if you want to write in text, inline styling, all of those things go inside the head tag. So whatever you put inside the head tag, most of the things are not visible on the browser. I said most of the things because the document name is going to come in the browser tab. So if I go back and then show you, see EcoKids you see here in the browser tab, that's coming because the titles document is set to EcoKids in that case. Okay, so let's quickly show our page first, and because I have Microsoft's live server installed, I can simply click on this icon here on the top right corner if it is installed. If it's not showing up in your case, you should just restart after installing and it will show up. You click on this one and then you can see this index.html. okay, this index.html, and it's showing the preview in the browser. Now here you see written document, that's the tab. Now if I change it to EcoKids, you see as I change it side by side, it is also changing, which is a good thing. Unlike every time you make the changes and save it and then again refresh the browser page. Okay, so we are saving 3 steps here by enabling autosave. The autosave is automatically saving the document and live server is automatically refreshing the page. That's beautiful, right? So EcoKids demo, that's going to be our document's name. Now these two things are just telling the browser that the char set or the character set which is used for building up this page falls under UTF-8. Okay, and then it goes on further and tells about that the viewport, now this I could explain it here, but it would just confuse you because it has to do something with the responsiveness. So this is something which is a new practice in HTML5 because a lot of people access things from mobile also. This essentially tells that the width of the page is going to be the width of the device. That means acquire as much as space you have in the horizontal space and then just fit the page. And initial scale has to be 1.0. That means the initial scale which we are starting with needs to be 1.0. Okay, not at a zoomed in state or a zoomed out state. So this is a new practice kind of. Earlier we were not having this line of code, but since mobile phones are there and a lot of people access it from mobile, we have this line here. Well, so now let's move to the place where we'll be working. We'll be working mostly in the body area. Okay, so this small exercise for next 10 minutes. If you want to take a break, now is the time. Take a break and then come back. Okay, well, so now what we are going to do is create that card, and as we do so, we will understand about some fundamental concepts of HTML and how the CSS works. Okay, so first thing first, I'm going to write the content which I need inside the card. So I need a heading. In HTML we have a reserved tag for creating heading which is known as h1. You just have to type h, that's it, and it will give you a list of things available. So I want the h1 tag, then I'm going to hit enter, that's it. It automatically opens and closes the tag for us so that we can fit in things inside. Now inside this h1 tag, whatever I'll write, that is going to render on this page. Make sure that you are building up all your tags inside the open and close body tags. This is going to be rendered on the page, okay, unlike the top part. So here I'm going to write my amazing card, and as I do so, you see it's also getting updated here. By the way, if instead of h1 I type it in h2, what do you think is going to happen? Let me just quickly copy this entire thing here and paste it. Yes, it's smaller than h1, and similarly we have h3, h4, h5 all the way to h6. So they are just arranged in terms of their sizes and to create a hierarchy inside the visual space by changing the font size. Okay, similarly we also have another tag. Okay, let me just change this to, because I want a subtitle or subheading also, so I'm gonna change it to H4, and we will start with the P tag. So I'm gonna type P and hit enter. You guessed it correct. P stands for paragraph, like H stands for heading, P stands for paragraph. And I'm going to place some text here. So I'm just gonna go to the page I already created and copy this lorem ipsum text. This is just a placeholder, okay? And we are going to go back to Visual Studio Code and paste it here. Excellent. So we have the H1 tag, we have the H4 here, and you see how differently they are getting rendered. Now these are the default styling in HTML5. If you don't do any additional styling, this is going to be common for all the HTML pages. But we definitely want to change the font, the size, and style it in a different way. And we will do that with the help of CSS. And we will do that just in a while. But let me just change the H4 here and say this is the subtitle, sorry, for the card. If you had noticed, we also have a picture in between the H4 and the paragraph tag. Okay, so we can bring in that image as well. Okay, let me bring that image first. So for bringing in the images, I have a lot of images here and we can use any of it. So for bringing in the image, what I'm going to do is introduce a new tag here, and that tag is named as img. img is a self-contained tag like meta, okay, or HTML or doc type, because you need not to close it after opening it. It's a self-contained tag. You see there is no closing. What it needs though is a source from where the image is going to be fetched. The source can be local, that means you can have it in the folder, in the root directory, or you can also fetch the image from a URL. Okay, all right, in this case I already have the image, and notice how I'm going to pull that image inside this. All you have to do is type in images, and the VS Code is so smart that it recognizes there is a folder by the name images, and it gives you access to the content of that. If you hit enter, it further takes you to the content inside and allows you to pick one. And you see there is another folder inside. If you want to go inside that, you can do that as well. I don't want that. I would just select product 5 and hit enter. Okay, make sure that the extension of the image you are using is also written. If the extension is not written, the code does not understand it as an image. It will understand it as a folder or something else, and that's not a good idea. Now after importing the image, I see that the image is way bigger than what I had anticipated. It's acquiring a lot of space, right? And we need to take care of this as well. Now there are many ways how we can do that. A quick way would be just to go there, and after the alt tag, what alt tag does, I'll tell you later. So after the alt tag, we can hit a space and then type in width. And this allows you to set the width of the image. If you just define the width property, the height will automatically be adjusted. It is a good idea to not define both unless it is really needed. Okay, otherwise what it will do, it may distort the image. So I'm just gonna define the width, and let's say that I want the width to be around 300 pixels. So I'm just going to go inside the code marks and type in 300 pixels. See, the moment I typed 300, the image size already got reduced, but you can't leave it like this. Browsers are generous nowadays, but you may never know where the layout is gonna go and break. So it's always to explicitly define, it's always a good idea to explicitly define which unit of measurement you are using. I'm using pixels, and by default that's the unit of measurement HTML has, so that's why it resized even without writing pixels. So I have resized my image. Probably if I want it smaller, I can simply say 250 pixels, and you see it responds. The moment I change the size, it responds. That's a good way of controlling the size of the image. However, make a note, this is not a good practice. So what we will do, we will change the size of the image by using the CSS. For now, I'm just gonna let it be there, and when we reach there, I'll again tell you that why it is not a good idea. Okay. Now, if you have done this much, it would be a good idea to pause here, and then give it a go. Okay. Or take a break, come back. Well, so now if you have done it, let's move ahead to the next part, which is adding a style sheet and then putting it inside a card. Okay. So now in order to build a style sheet, what we are going to do is create a new document. Make sure that the document is being created in the root directory. And you can ensure that by clicking on the empty area here, which highlights the entire box and the root directory. Sometimes by mistake, what you could do is select this and then create a new file. Now in this case, what happens, the new file gets created inside the images directory, which is not a good idea. Okay, you will know later how it is important to have all the files in the root directory properly organized. So I'm gonna make sure that we are in the root directory and click on this, and then I'm going to type in style.css and hit enter, which opens up the style.css. Okay, so if you don't understand anything, the mumbo jumbo I'm talking about, it would be a good idea to just make a note of those and later on take help of the resources I'll be showing to learn more about that. Okay, because within the scope of this tutorial, covering everything in full detail is not possible, and even if it is possible, it's going to be super boring for you guys because you are just started with the web development. Okay, so but follow along and do things step by step. Build the thing which at least we are building in this demonstration, and that will give you a good start. So in the style.css, whatever we type in, that is going to get associated with the tags. We have to essentially select the tags, but not select in this fashion. We have to select the tags by using CSS selectors, okay, which targets the HTML tags. Understand, CSS has selectors which can target HTML tags, but we have to define the classes for them. There are some reserved classes. Let me go back to the document and learn. Let's look at the theory for a while. So this part, what is important for next 10-20 minutes. Okay, so we have learned that HTML is hypertext markup language, helps us organize content within HTML file. Then CSS is cascading style sheet used for styling and designing web pages. It dictates how HTML elements should appear on the front end of a web page. When they say front end, they mean the thing which we see in the browser basically. Okay. Now then there are classes, IDs, tags and reserved tags. We will go through the definitions one by one. So the classes are attribute which is used to define equal styles for elements of the same class. Okay, now this definition confuses us more than clarifying things. So understand it this way. You can read through this, but I'll give you an example. You also belong to a class. Class usually is created when you have a group of people whom are you targeting. So for example, let's say that you are in section C, okay, in the class of visual communication, right? So addressing the whole population which comes under this category becomes easy by just assigning a class to them. However, if I want to pick out the individual people in the class, then this method is not gonna work. So in that case, what we will do, we will have unique IDs, like you have ID cards. So ID cards are specific to the people, right? One ID card cannot be assigned to more than one people, right? While class can have a lot of people with a variety of ID cards, different kind of ID cards. Okay, and within the class also, if I want to create subgroups, let's say for example, the people who are wearing specs in the class. So I can define a further class So go to visual communication section C class, and then again build a class which uh, uh, brings together all the people who are wearing specs in the class. Okay, all the people who have laptop, all the people who have desktop, right, all the people who have smartphones, all the people who do not have smartphones. So think of these things kind of classes. Okay, classes can be used multiple times in HTML. So all these tags needs to have some classes unless they are already reserved tags. Okay, I have given this example of reserved tags. These are tags predefined by HTML specifications such as HTML body, div, etc, each serving a specific purpose in the document structure. So these are all reserved tags. We can also assign classes to them, which we will do later on, right? When we create a div to wrap everything. Divs are like boxes, imaginary boxes. Those boxes are there to bring the content together, keep the content together. Right now all these contents are inside the body tag. So body is like also a division, div. Okay, so body is a reserved keyword, right? It's a reserved class, and we have everything inside the body of our HTML page. Now these three things can also be brought in together, right? But before we do so, let us first link our style sheet. Okay, so linking is extremely important. You may write thousands of lines of code in the style sheet, but if it is not linked with the right document, it's not going to work. So in order to link the style sheet we had created with index page, all we have to do is come here, hit enter under the title, and then type in LINK and then hit enter. VS Code did the job already. It has defined the link, established the relation as a style sheet, and gave us a place where we can type in the URL. So in this case, it is in the same directory. It is in the same directory as index.html. So we to just type in the name of the file followed by the extension, and see, VS Code already knows that there is a style.css file exists. So I just have to hit enter, and that's all we have to do. If you see this underline, that simply means that the file got linked correct. And if you want to go to that file, you can hold control and then click on this, and that's going to take you to that file. A very nice and helpful feature. Now in the style.css, what I want to do here is change the style of this, change the style of this, and change the style of this. Right now these are all serif fonts. I want them to be sans serif, and I can do that by typing in a few lines of codes here. So because there are reserved tags currently in my document, I do not have any custom class. All of them are reserved tags. We don't have to worry about defining them in the CSS. Okay, so I can simply type h1, which will target all the h1 elements, and then open and close curly braces. You just have to type open curly braces, and VS Code automatically closes it, and then you hit enter. If you see this error mark here, don't worry. The empty definitions in CSS code is what showing us the error the moment we type something here. So this is the property, and after the property we have the attributions of that property. So h1 and h1 needs to be styled in this particular way. So I'll say, let's say font family, and then I'm going to type in the font family here. The way we define fonts in any graphic design software is not the way we define fonts in HTML documents or web development. We always define a group of fonts because they are in the order of fallbacks. What happens in print document or digital documents which we create in graphic design, we sort of embed the font. We convert it in a format which does not require any fonts to be loaded in the system, right? If we are creating a PDF file, we just embed the fonts in the document. Now in the HTML, that is also a possibility, right? But sometimes that makes the file very heavy, and nowadays there are possibilities where you can actually create a font folder and use all the fonts. but then there are copyright issues, and there are many things to take care of in that case. So, and what happens if you don't specify the font, then the browser is going to use the system fonts which are installed already in the system. So at least we should guide it that what type of fonts to look for. So I can go for Arial, Helvetica, Sans Serif. That is what my intention was. Or I can go for Sergio UI, Tahoma, Geneva, Verdana and Sans Serif. So what it is simply telling us that go look for Arial. If Arial is not there, then find Helvetica. If you don't find Arial or Helvetica both, then look for any closest sans serif font and use that to render the page. Okay, so in this case, what is going to happen, if the page is going to be accessed from a Windows system, it will look for Arial. If it is going to be seen from a Mac system, it will look for Helvetica. If both of them are not available in any of the system, then it will find a sans serif font and open the page. So I'm going to use this, and instantly you see that the font got changed. The size is fine because the size is being delivered by the default styling of H1, H4 and paragraph. Okay, quickly I'm just going to go, and then let's say that I want H4 also to have the same font family. So I can type it like this, right? And you see that H4 font family also got changed. Let's say I want the paragraphs font family also to be changed. So I'm going to type in P, and all these are reserved tags. So I don't need to put a dot in front of it. Usually for custom classes, we have to start the selector by typing in a dot. We will talk about that in just a while. So I'm going to choose font family and again choose Arial, Helvetica, Sans Serif. Now, if you look at this code, everything works perfect, the way we intended it to. But it's a lot of code, right? And a lot of redundancy, and that doesn't seem right. So what we can do is just get rid of these two lines, and since the properties are common in nature, what we can do is we can include more tags just by putting comma, and it will work just fine. So saves a lot of time, right? But this is only true for the tags having the common properties. If the common attributions are there, I keep on saying properties and attribution, forgive me for that. That's not the right lingo, but that got into my habit. So these are the attributions, these are the properties basically. So we can have more than one properties and then assign multiple attributions which are common to them like this, rather than writing separately for all of them. So far so good. Yes. Now if I want to reduce the font size of paragraph, let's say, so if I do it here and go for font size and choose, let's say, 20 pixel, see what it does. It changes the font size of all, the H1's font size also, the H4 also, and the P also, because this property is unique, right? Let me just delete this. Unique to only P. I'll write separately P and only give the font size, and I want it smaller than 20 actually, so I'm going to go for 16 pixels. And see, now the font size is reduced. I can also go for 10 pixels. See, let's go for 12. So the common properties are addressed here. Common attributions of the properties are addressed there. And here, the unique attributions are assigned to that particular tag. Okay, this is how you can write CSS codes. Now, the next thing is wrapping all of it inside a box, right? So let's create that box. We will jump to index.html and then hit enter right below the body where it is opening, and then type in div. Now pay attention what it does. It creates a div tag, opens it and closes it. We need to make sure that all this content goes inside this. So there are two ways. I can copy this entire thing and then paste it here. Not suggested. What you should do rather is just cut this closing tag by saying Ctrl X, come here. After the P tag closes, hit enter and paste it. Now while I did it, notice that the structure of the document is not looking the way it should, right? The div tag is here, it's closing here, in between there are so many elements, right? So creating sort of a confusion that why this is here, why this is here. So what we will do is use code formatter. So I'm gonna say Control Shift P to go to the command palette and then type it format document. Look for this option where it says format document. For HTML and CSS, this has inbuilt document formatter. For other languages, you might have to download a separate formatter. For in this case, I'm just gonna say format document. That's it. Okay. And now you see that this looks more readable. So body tag is starting here, body tag is closing here, div is starting. So all the tags which are at the same level are aligned properly, and this makes the code more readable. This is a good practice. Okay. Well, so I have started it and wrapped it successfully, but I don't see anything changing in the document, right? Because we did not define the properties for the div. We did not tell that how this division should render in the browser. So we'll do just that by adding a class to it. So I'm going to type in class, hit enter and give it a name. While naming the classes, make sure that you give meaningful names, which you also can at least recognize, if not your fellow coder. So I'm just gonna type card because this is a card, right? And this makes me understand that I'm working for the card I have built, and these are the contents which are there inside the card. Okay. So after giving this class here, I can go to the style.css, and here I can address that class by typing in dot, which is important for addressing a class, and the class's name was card, and then open and close curly braces, and in between these curly braces, whatever we are going to type, the attributions, if these are right attributions or known attributions in CSS, it is going to affect our pages. Okay, so this particular class div had some properties which we can pick up. So first thing what we are going to do is make something visible on the screen. So I'm gonna set background color and change it to aqua, and instantly you see that the background color shows up there. Okay, and we are actually managed to put the content inside the box. Now it's just need to be styled. So we'll go one step at a time. Next thing I realized that the text is just flushing with the edges of the box. I don't want that, so I'm gonna use padding for that. I'll type in padding. Padding is the space inside and margin is the space outside. This white border you see is showing up because body had some padding automatically applied to it. Body also is a reserved class, and it also has some styling by default applied to it. If you don't want this margin anywhere, then you can simply type body and then say margin equals to 0, padding equals to 0. Try doing that. Now for the padding, I want 10 pixels, and you see instantly the content is pushed 10 pixels from all of the sides. Okay, now here if you are wondering, sir, why this is so much compared to this when you have assigned only 10 pixel. See, this font has some line height attribute by default. So that line height attribute is actually accounting for this space and this space after this. Okay, so play around with that property for the h1 element, and if you really wish to adjust this, for example, say h1, and I go for line height and I set it to 0 pixel, and you see we have managed to push it up. I don't want that in this case, so I'm just gonna remove this line of code. Never stop yourself from experimenting. Nothing you can do is going to stop you from basically while coding, there is a fear that if I do something wrong, how will I get it back? So come out of that fear of yourself. Just make mistakes. Absolutely nothing wrong in making mistakes. The more mistakes you do, the more you learn. The real thing is, after making the mistakes, are you ready for the new mistake? Okay, So as long as you are ready for the new mistakes, you will learn. Okay, excellent. So we have a card, looks nice, everything. Now I think this preview window is too small for us to actually visualize how the card is going to look. So I want to see it in the browser. So I'm going to click on this hamburger icon here and then click on open in browser. And this is how it looks, right? And this is not what we had anticipated, right? We wanted it to look like a card, not like this lengthy box. Why this is happening? Because all of the HTML elements we have used are block elements. Go and read more about block elements. So block elements are the elements which acquire the space across the width of the page. So the h1 is also a block element, this is also a block element, image is also a block element, and p is also a block element. And on top of that, the div we have used is also a block element, right? So if I want to make it look like a card, we need to define the width of that block element. Okay, and what block element also does, it acquires the entire space. It may seem as if the my amazing card, the h1 tag, is acquiring just one line, but it is actually acquiring this entire length. This entire length it is acquiring. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is pause the video for a while, and I want also you to pause the video, take a break if you want to, and then come back while we deal with this problem and then create our card.